Okay, perfect, thank you. It's the special meeting of council, May 21st, 7 p.m. I can acknowledge that we have, what?
6 p.m.
What did I say?
7.
7? Oh, I'm just used to
That's
saying
what
7.
I'm saying.
Okay, I can confirm we have quorum. The mayor and council wish to acknowledge the town of Fort Smith is located within Treaty 8 territory. Treaty 8 territory also encompasses the traditional homelands of the Salt River First Nation, Thabida, the Nisuthlane Nation, and the indigenous Métis peoples of Fort Smith. These nations have maintained stewardship of the sacred lands and throughout the generations. We honor your knowledge, teachings, traditions, and the land. We're mindful that colonization has not been kind, and we respectfully recognize our generational histories and commit to strive for unity in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Can I have someone adopt the agenda? Oh, sorry, Kirshak.
I'll move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, Councillor Bay. Discussion? All in favor? Perfect. All right, so we move on to administration. So in your package, you have the briefing note that was shared with you earlier. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna let David start out, give some explain what's going on with the spreadsheet. And then I thought we could start with, if once he's finished his explanation, we can go around the room with questions, or just if you have questions, we can bring them up and hopefully that will solve someone else's questions as we go along. Okay, so go ahead, David. Is Mike, are you here? Can you hear us? Okay.
Okay. All right, Your Worship, members of council. So a brief summary from the briefing note. You'll have to tell me if I'm assuming that people might be listening in, so we should summarize this.
Yes.
Okay. So briefly on the background of the briefing note, GNWT processed a 10-year update of property assessments, which we're all familiar with, which caused a major change in our assessments. Primarily, it increased the residential related assessments by approximately 40%, non-residential related assessments in total 4%, which causes a shift of taxation over onto the residential categories. Council outlined parameters for the 2026 operating budget, including a cap of 3.5% maximum increase to property taxes. And a reminder that property taxes include property taxes plus grants in lieu of taxes, which other government levels pay in lieu of taxes. So the property tax requirement to hit the 3.5% requirement from council is 4.366 million. The revised mill rates here, and we are putting forward revised mill rates because on May 7th, we passed a bylaw with a set of mill rates that once we had a chance to do an analysis of them against the revised assessments, proved that we had to correct them. So it's going to bring in a shortfall in tax revenue, so we had to go back and crunch the numbers. So we did, we've revised those suggested mill rates, and we have come back to council with 3 possible scenarios. We revised the mill rates based on the 3.5% cap that the council advised, and the first scenario is if we kept the ratios of tax classes exactly the same as they were in 2025, here's what it would be. The second scenario is we tried to balance the burden between residential and non-residential. And when we talk about burden, we're talking about the total dollars that come out of that tax class. Because as I said earlier, with the huge change in residential, it means that residential would pick up a bigger burden rate, which would mean that those rates would go up much higher than the 3.5%. They would be carrying, a larger portion. Council identified that they were comfortable with that. So we went to a third scenario where we built into the spreadsheet, and I'll show you in a minute here, the ability to adjust each class. And this gets a little tricky because you're getting into playing with the numbers, and the more we do that, the more complicated it gets. But I'll show you what we tried to do on the spreadsheets the spreadsheet is up on the screen here. The very first one shows the 2025 ratios. We simplified the ratio. You might remember that on existing ratios, we had these numbers where the pointer is. For example, residential developed was at 0.435. This first step is just a simplification, because the first one is the ratio of one category to the next. And over time, it's clear that it's been adjusted in different ways. So we've got these numbers that are a little more complicated to understand. We simplify it by setting the residential developed as a base ratio of 1. And then every other tax class is either below that or higher than that, based on if it's 1.5, it's roughly 50% higher than the base rate. If it's 0.5, it would be 50% of the base rate. So that's just a simplification, that's a step. And then we establish the mill rates. And this is the 2025 mill rates that you're all familiar with. And this is the 2025 taxable assessment. So if it's green on this spreadsheet, it's information that we put in. We took this directly off the assessment rolls, summaries. And the 2025 GIL, grant in lieu assessment. Both of these have to be factored in. The red is a calculation. So everywhere you see a red, it's a calculation based on the input numbers that we put in. So this is the taxable assessment we bring in, and then this is assessment times rates, tax revenues. And this percentage here, 45% and 54%, just separates off everything up here is residential. So that's resident developed, vacant residential, country residential, vacant country residential. And it carried roughly 45% of the tax burden. And then 54% was carried by non-residential. That was in 2025. Now this is a calculation we tried to put in because council asked for this at our last meeting to try and show how is this relevant to the average person. So what we've done here is the best way to show this is on residential developed, there's approximately 800 properties in that category. That's good because an average becomes more meaningful than when it's a fairly good number of properties. What we took is the total tax revenues there divided by the number of properties. So it's really straightforward. That's the average tax burden for a residential developed property. Remember that every property is going to be slightly different, so they're going to be up and down. You individually, your assessment might be much different, it might be higher, it might be lower, so your actual taxes might be very different.
Is it okay to ask questions as we go, or would you prefer?
Sure.
Go ahead. Yeah, for sure.
Just wondering do we know how many properties are in the country residential?
It's much lower. I don't have the exact number right now, but I think it's, I can find out.
Okay.
But it's much lower.
Okay, because it's just that the numbers, the change for that is quite significant, right? So I'm just wondering about the burden on those properties.
Yeah, and
relative to the residential developed.
And the quick reflection is that at $67,000 of revenue in that category, even if they were at say 2,000, you're talking how many properties there. It gives you, my math's not that good on that one, but it'll give you an idea. It's clearly
30-ish,
clearly a lot less, right? Yeah. And that does skew it when you deal with these numbers. When you're dealing with much less numbers, one vacant property converted to a developed property makes a big difference then, right? So that's the burden rate. When we talk about burden, that's what we're talking about. And ignore these last two these two files here, weighted assessment and calculation. Those were being used for as part of the calculation process. That's why they're at the end of that line. But this tells us that the average residential tax in the residential developed category in 2025 was $2,142. That does not include the education tax, which is it's fairly marginal, but that's another 2%. So, and it is going up 6% this year, and that is dictated to us by the territory. So we don't have a choice on that. Okay. So, the first scenario, And this run here is inputting the updated assessments. So we got the new assessments that are a 10-year update, and using the exact same ratios of 2025, not changing any of the ratios. So we calculate the new mill rates. This is the 2026 mill rate under that scenario. Again, the assessments, we input that, but that's this is the updated assessments from the new assessment level. And what does that do? It shifts, keeping the exact same ratio, the average residential property tax in the residential developed class will go up to $2,500. That's a 17% increase. And keep in mind, this is with a 3.5% cap on property tax. What changes that to 17% is the shift in burden. Because you've basically taken half of the burden, shifted it over. And I know I tried last time to explain that, but it's a tough one to explain. But it shifts the burden over into the residential category. And arguably, that would be not the most favorable situation from council, understandably. So that's the first scenario. Then we say, okay, well, if we try to keep the same burden rates between residential and non-residential that were in 2025, that gets a little more complicated. We kind of separated the two by this line here. And we set up a base rate or ratio for non-residential and the base ratio for residential. And so these percentages then are the same as in 2025. So that results in almost a negligible increase on the residential side. And it keeps but it's a little more, it's not a very delicate adjustment. It's a little more complicated when we're doing the two base rates. So you do end up in that scenario with some categories that actually reduce their class taxes quite a bit. You see where these percentages are by class. And again, we think that's because of the adjustments, but sometimes it might be where a property was taken out of class. We won't, without a really long-term big analysis, which might just not be worth the time and effort. So there's always an element of uncertainty when you're doing that. And then the third option, which I think addresses the will of council a little bit better, is we have now gone to a more refined adjustment. These yellow boxes are set up so that if we put 10% in there, it'll adjust the ratio in that class by 10% up. And it adjusts the numbers all the way through. And if we put minus 10 in there, it would pull down that ratio by that amount. So the numbers that are in here right now, what I did is I looked at the actual tax revenues in each class from 2025, and where the new rates were reducing that amount, I increased the percentage to try and bring it up to almost even at least. Because basically on the idea that in any one particular class, does it make sense to actually reduce the amount of taxes you're paying if others are picking up the burden? So that didn't seem like the most equitable approach to it. So it seemed better to try and adjust those categories so that, minimum, you are likely paying the same or slightly higher. And what that did is it brought down the average residential tax to $2,223, which is a 3.8% increase. And you targeted 3.5% as a property tax increase overall. And with those adjustments, that's reflective of it. It's not exactly, and these figures aren't 100% exact, because we also know that in the 2025 assessments that I've got in here, we don't have that 60% adjustment that I talked about last time. But I don't think that's material to this discussion. I don't think it'll materially change what we're looking at. So, and there was a question sent to me this afternoon by a counselor who said, what if in this one category we move up the adjusted ratio to 1.5? Luckily, we were able to do that really quickly in this and come up with, it was in the vacant, residential vacant, for example. Right now, I've got a 10% adjustment to it, which brings it up from 1.0287 to 1.13. And to move the adjusted ratio up to 1.5, you just adjust the percentage to 40%. It's a little bit of hit and miss. You just try it, see what it comes to. And what it does is it brings the average residential tax down slightly to 3.4, and it brings up the amount in the vacant category up. I think the information I sent around brought it up by $10,000 or $15,000. And we do know, we were able to see that we have 166 residential vacant properties, right? So that calculation was pretty easy to figure out. So again, this is not, this is a geek's world of calculation stuff. So I'll try to explain it the best I can. How about it?
So are you ready for questions
Yeah.
then? Okay, right on.
So, in continuing on the question of the country residential developed, it looks like here with scenario 3, they would see a 28.9% increase in their property taxes. Is that what that means?
Yes, and that in the category, and that's the one I spotted later today that I thought, yeah, that might be a little problematic, right?
Yeah. So just like as a suggestion, if we, it would feel weird to essentially give somebody a 30% property tax increase while also there's other classes where we're seeing reductions in property tax, such as institutional vacant, right? And is it possible to, zero out the institutional vacant so, it becomes, a net, this year is the same as last year, but that change is then applied to the country residential.
If you're okay with me.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, because I think that's what we want to see is the tweaking.
So let's tweak this one. So if we tweak that one, and it just went up 6.8%, and you saw the average number went from 3.8 to 3.7%. This number dropped slightly. This number dropped from -2% to plus 6.8%, and it does adjust all the other ones as well. If you went here to the country residential, for example, and if we drop that to so that just dropped that change, a little tender here, from 28% to 17%, and it's probably even.
That's because their assessed values went up? Is that why the increase is so high?
Because of changes in assessments in that category.
Okay.
And if we drop that, you can even go negative. And see it affects all the categories. Our bottom line figure is correct. That's good. So, at that point, you're seeing the average house price is going up, properties going up 3.2%. The category went up 4.1%. Why there's a difference there is because we did get, I think, 4 or 5 new houses. So that skews, the burden in the category went up slightly higher than the average. That's why. Mm-hmm. So with those slight adjustments, you're dealing with a much smaller quantity of properties
Right.
out of the category. So you got to be careful because
The small changes can make big
Yeah.
changes.
And we do know, like, for example, there is always some uncertainty in this, and every time you do major assessment adjustments, guarantee there will be some people that will come in, and say, hey, I got my tax bill. It's big. Anybody that got a big reduction will not be coming in to talk to us. So that's a bit of the challenge.
Go ahead, Carl.
So I'm a little perplexed on the negative numbers. If we need a bit more money than last year, right? What we had figured out is the extra 3.5% across the board. Why would we reduce taxes on properties where people have paid that last year? Why wouldn't we just have all of them at whatever?
It's because of the assessment challenge. So your property, I think the best way to try to describe it is what we did last week. If suddenly your assessment's all double in one category, you're going to have to adjust your rates in that category to half.
For sure.
It's insane.
So, but these negative numbers means that in theory, those people will have a lower tax bill than last year.
Yeah, and I'll show you, for example, let's pick a category that's got a negative. This one is, I think, institutional vacant. And again, that's a little troubling because sometimes it's because those properties are not vacant anymore, so they go to a different class. So that's something you have to be aware of without checking. That's always a possibility. It's unlikely that you'll have significant changes like that. But 33,000 is the revenue that would come from that category under this scenario. If you went back up to currently 37,000 under the current assessment and the current mill rates.
Last year's though.
Yeah, that was last year. So it was 37 in that category, and this year that would drop to 36, 33. And if there's the same number of properties, yes. But remember, the way our assessments work too is that as soon as you build something, that's a vacant property. So that means the value of those properties have dropped according to their assessment process.
So there's no real way to figure out what the typical bill is going to be without trial and error.
And what you don't know is what if one property dropped drastically in there?
Yeah.
The others might have gone up, but the total might have gone down. So that's how it gets complicated. And that's why we use it at the last discussion. The question came up is why can't you just reduce every property by 3.5%? Problem with that is that you would have to do individual mill rates for every property because every property has a different assessment value, and so it changed differently. So it's just not practical to do that. Not within the system is the way it works. So yeah. So that's where we're at right now.
Is there any other questions? Yep, go ahead.
It's not a question, but I am in favor generally of tweaking it, scenario 3 with the vacant properties, whether we're talking vacant residential, vacant industrial, whatever else, to increase the load on those, even though it's not going to be a huge amount, and then to reduce the residential country and residential developed in town.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
That does make sense. Thank you. Yep, go ahead.
I agree, but I think it's important that we know how many properties we're talking about in the country residential developed. Because if there's like 5 more houses on there, it makes sense that there's that much increase, right? And so, just before we get tweaking, right? Because if we have a bunch of new
5
houses,
new bills.
then you would have the 28% might be there.
Your worship, we can do that right now if you'd like.
Okay.
Sure.
And interestingly, in country residential, there are no grants in lieu in the country residential category. So it reduces the quantity quite a bit. And we can do it right here by doing this. So country residential developed, 36.
And is that a change from 2025?
Walsh just built this year. Look at the names.
32. It went up 4.
So it makes sense that we're collecting a lot more from them.
Yeah, and you would have to, sometimes, but I would guess that, a value of a country residential property developed, it's a brand new property. And the way we do our assessment, the improvement goes in at the full value, and then it's depreciated from that point downward. So a brand new property carries a hefty bill. So we just went up from 36, I think I said, to
Yeah.
36 to from 32.
32.
So percentage-wise, that's it's going to have an effect. So that category will bear. It makes sense that category bears a bigger change in the category burden, right? So.
And the revenue went from 67 to 86.
Yeah, and I could do the math on the dividing by the.
I got you in just a second.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's a difference of $300 per property increase.
On average.
Yeah, $380 on average.
Yeah. So, and it's unique. The depreciating value of the improvement is it poses some problems in itself. It means that new properties always bear a bigger tax load than an existing property. And so you actually have decreasing taxes in some cases. Yeah. And if we look at, so that we did adjust that vacant, the residential vacant, we went up slightly there. So it carries a slightly higher load. The country residential vacant is right now carrying a less load. It could go up, and if you're good with me tweaking with this as we go, I will.
Sure. Hey, Councillor Crevette, are you online?
Supposed to be.
I just thought.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm just checking. I'm just making sure you're still there, that's all.
And I'd like you to talk about country residential.
Oh.
So I just adjusted the country residential vacant number up from 20 to 30% adjustment. And that, you'll see that in the total tax class change in revenue, it's still slightly negative from 2025 at -1. But put in context, that's the number we're dealing with. Total revenues of $1,500.
It's probably one property.
Yeah.
It's very small, yeah. So I'm not dealing with a whole lot. We can check that to see how many properties we are dealing with. Country residential vacant. So we're dealing with 8 properties. But the taxation obviously on those ones is very low. So if you've got $1,500 over 8 properties, let's call it 10. Yeah, it's very low taxation. I guess it's in the eye of the beholder. If you own that property, you probably don't consider it very low. This one that shows a fairly significant negative is industrial vacant. And it's trickier making adjustments there simply because you don't know what the effect, like how that, there's going to be few properties. Did a property come offline? Is it a major adjustment in value? Is it And again, you're not dealing with a lot of money, but there's, 33,000.
What if you did put more onto the residential vacant?
This one here.
One more. Here, one, yeah.
Okay.
Because those are the properties that we talk about that we describe as not undeveloped with trees and that kind of thing.
If you went to 30%, and I think the example that we used this afternoon was 40, which when you talk about percentages, 40 seems like a lot, but again, you have to have context, right? Look at what it does to the numbers. So, that one, so 40. I think we said to bring it up to 1.5 was 45, brought it up to 1.5, so 1.4917. And again, it went from, 29% sounds a lot, but it's going from a total of 42,000, 43,000 to 55. So it's going up approximately 12,000 total across
Of the
166
160 properties.
Yes, that's why importance is, context is always important, right? Sometimes the percentages sound crazy and then you go, okay, we're dealing with relatively small numbers sometimes.
How can we adjust the percentage to have a more of an effect? The desired effect is ultimately we want people to develop, and as soon as it's developed, then they're gonna, shift in their tax. Is that not something we can do here as an incentive to
Oh,
get
you
them
can.
There's still
Yeah.
a carrot
Yeah,
stick.
but you don't wanna do too much in 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, as an owner of a vacant residential lot,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it going from a 1 to a 1.5.
Okay.
If it keeps the residential one to 3.4 or whatever you said it was, I'm okay with that, but you can't do it all in 1 year. If we chip away at it every year,
Okay. Fair.
I'm more comfortable with that.
And again, it's not lack of lots available for development that is a hindrance, so are we penalizing, are you incentivizing or are you just penalizing?
It's a good question. We something we could look into for the next year, and I'm not sure if we are able to do it under legislation here, is some places will do minimum taxes for properties as well. Where it's a minimum tax of $500 a year, or for different types of categories of properties. Sometimes that's helpful to make sure that, because other times properties just, sometimes they'll get so low that you look at it and think, are you paying for your share of services? That's a question. That's another discussion, that takes a lot of evaluation. So in this scenario now, what we've done here is the average residential is at 3%. And then if we factor in the education on top of that, which is 6%, but it's so marginal, it comes down to like $20 or $30 difference to a unit. So, and we haven't included that here simply to not confuse it. We don't have control over it. So.
Oh, sorry, Patty.
Sure. Can I, just wanna ask, why is scenario 2, not a good option? As a single woman paying too much tax in my own hometown, and young people like me, things to consider for the future?
Yeah, I think from my recommendation standpoint, 2 things stood out. Is one, it starts getting overly complicated when you're setting up 2 rationales, like for non-residential and residential, but still with multiple classes in each. That's a me problem. But the result came up to some of these things where you had some classes that -15, -26, -12, so you had a wide range of plus and minuses, and it just seemed that it would be better if you could address some of those individually, right? It's just like the discussion we were just having to say, does that make sense that some classes would go down? Why would we do that? Is there a reason to do that, or a rationale? Or is it just a result of the system and the way it's doing it? It seems that historically over the last 4 or 5 years, you've been trying not to do that. You've been trying to tweak different categories. So this would be regressive in that sense. It would push you back on that efforts in some ways. That's the only reason. It's not a very strong argument, but it's just enough to push the recommendation to the third. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say it, I'm not sure if, as we're adjusting here, it's more just for seeing the numbers and just from my own perspective now seeing that the increased revenue generated from the country residential comes from the increase in the number of properties, that I would actually go back to, what's presented here in scenario 3 as being okay.
Like the original ones we have here, like these
Yeah,
numbers,
yeah.
the 10, 10, 20, this what's
Yeah,
here, okay.
I've based, I think when you see the burden of revenue as being like 28%, it seems like, for this conversation, it seems like, oh, that means their property taxes are going up by 30%, but it's not an individual property. It's that there's more properties paying more, so that's why the pot's grown bigger.
One thing I did notice is that previously, historically, your country residential was less than the residential developed.
Right.
Was there an argument for that?
It was because they're not on plumbed town water,
Surface
serviced water.
So the argument was they receive less service.
I think so, like, I know that has come up in discussion like that, but they have received still the same, so they still get garbage, snow removal, and truck water,
Yeah.
water delivery, so
Which
it's
is
not, it's just different service, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think
They pay
they pay for them,
significantly for the water.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that's probably, I think, why.
And I've lined up a meeting with the assessment office to find out how our assessments are done. And why I say that is because often, and I don't know if this is the case here, you would assess a country residential property at a factor lower than a service property because of where it's located and that it's not on service. A property is usually more valuable if it's on services.
Yes.
So that's usually factored into the assessment process. So if you're factoring that into the actual rates as well, you're factoring it in twice.
Oh,
Jesus.
okay.
Yeah, it's something to consider. But I don't know if that's the case here yet until I sit down with the assessment office and we walk through how do you assess the value of a property. It's like, it's really simple on the, to understand that when you do an improvement, if you add $500,000 bill to a property, there's an improvement value. But the property itself is a pseudo market price, right? When you're actually the actual property. So how is that assessed? There's got to be some kind of factors that they use. Do they consider connected to services or not? Sometimes they consider, are you on a corner, right? Because a corner property is sometimes more valuable than a non-corner property or frontage, that kind of thing. Don't know yet.
Do you guys want to go around the room with final questions, or has all your questions been answered? Go ahead, Carl.
So I think I'm generally happy with scenario 3. I think, although in terms of explaining to the public and people who may be upset with the taxes, again, the negative 12.8% I still am concerned about, because why would we give a discount to basically GNOT vacant land?
But it could be there's one less property generating revenue.
Right.
Right. Sorry, yeah.
But there's still, is there, I mean, we checked that for the other one, is there a quick way to check that for?
Institutional vacant, right?
Yeah.
Industrial.
There's a bunch.
Institutional vacant here.
These are yellow.
Yellow is when we go into grants and loop,
Okay.
but we use them for calculating the cost though. So there, institutional vacant is 17. It's not a lot. And then let's check
There were some other ones higher up, are they different or?
that's institutional
No,
development.
Go up a little
Scroll
bit
up
more.
more, there's another.
Right there.
Oh, sorry, industrial, never mind.
Yeah, that's industrial.
Okay, 17.
Right. Yeah, so industrial is a very small number.
Yeah, what do we have in 2025?
Industrial, institutional developed,
Vacant.
institutional vacant is 17, so I think that's the same number then, right?
Yeah.
Alright, so it's a good point. So their assessment has gone down and their taxes are going down right now. Yeah, so that's that category right there.
That should be tweaked so it comes out zero, so
Yeah.
at least they're paying the same amount.
Maybe, yeah.
Or up by
Or up by
3.5%.
3.5, yeah.
Yeah, so I turned it, did I hit the right one? Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. And that's still slightly negative. Until one day, let's bring my glasses.
Yeah, I think you're at 0.5, yeah.
And then were we?
So I hit it, institutional vacant, I adjusted it up 50, and that moved that to there. So, there we go.
Can we do 55?
Are we keeping the residential vacant at 45? Was that?
I would still stay
No,
with that.
I think
I am actually.
for clarification on just what we're working on, is, you want to put the numbers as you presented here, put them back to how you presented, but then increase the institutional vacant to what we have just done. I think that's what you guys were talking about, right?
I think maybe
And
residential.
Oh, and residential vacant?
Residential vacant.
Okay, both.
I don't know if 45% is as much as you want to do, but
So,
The other
I
number's
think
correct.
definitely a little.
My lot would go from like 200 and some to 3, you know, it goes up 100 bucks
Yeah.
for my empty lot, so at 45.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge, it sounds big, but it really isn't,
Sure enough, yeah.
dollar wise.
yeah. Okay, so 45, and the next one, originally 10.
10.
Next one was,
It was
20.
20 on the sheet.
and now it's at 30. Do we keep it there?
It's still going down
Yeah.
by percentage?
Slightly, and the whole category, yes. And again, you know, we're dealing with a total of the $1,500 across, I think we said 8 properties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
7 or 8, 7, I think.
so it's a marginal difference, and then we keep it at 20, and then we got, I get this right, commercial developed is done.
20.
Commercial developed is there. That was at 20, and then 30 for commercial vacant. They are experiencing slight drops. Industrial developed, 30, and that was a slight drop there. Industrial vacant, 20s, minor drop. Institutional developed, that's the one we,
No, vacant.
okay,
There's some great,
yeah, so that's right. And then, so then institutional vacant, we adjusted up by 20, from 30 to 20, or 50.
Yeah.
And it roughly evens out, and we checked that, it's the same number of properties, so those people will be paying the same taxes.
As last year.
Yeah.
Can we see how many properties are commercial vacant in 2025 versus 2026?
Okay, so, and we're looking for commercial vacant. In a big category, Madam Chair.
I know you do, okay, I know you both do.
Total commercial vacant,
proxy.
that's a pretty big
Oh,
category.
it was mostly commissioner's land.
Yeah.
The
So
commi-
that is 73 and 26. And looking like it's probably similar number. $78 and 25, so we dropped 78, we dropped 5 properties. Presumably, so they either were developed, moved into commercial, or they went, I guess that'd be the only reason.
Rezoning or land transfer.
Yeah. So that's interesting, so yeah, commercial, the number of properties in commercial vacant dropped.
So it makes sense the revenue goes down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I know we have 2 folks that need to go to another meeting, right after this. Does anyone else have any questions about the mill rate?
well, so I can't read it. So those changes to the vacant properties, country vacant, residential vacant,
45%.
and whatever, what does that do to the overall red one there? It was a 3.8,
3.3%.
now 3.3, that's
Yeah.
the one I wanted to
Yeah.
know. Okay.
So it's yeah, we're still in a pretty tight range there.
No,
Okay,
thank you.
all right. Last chance to go around for any other questions or discussion? Okay, this was the briefing note, so there's not a motion on the floor. So I need someone to make a motion and maybe specifically cite,
Your worship, I think first we need to repeal the previous bylaw.
It's within the same motion.
Ah, okay,
okay,
sorry.
okay, cool, awesome, okay, thanks. So, yes,
I move that council repeal the 2026 mill rate bylaw number 1084 and that council adopts scenario 3 with the ratios tweaked as discussed during the meeting to mitigate the impact of 10-year assessment update and associated shift in tax burden.
Thank you. Seconder,
I second.
Counselor Fate. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
We need a verbal one from Councilor Cooper.
Counselor Cravette?
Raise my hand, but I'll,
Oh, thank you, that you were in favor?
The camera's not on, we can't see that.
Sorry, we had a spreadsheet on the screen. Okay, perfect. Motion is passed unanimously. Okay, we're gonna do all 3 readings. So, okay, as we go. All right, the next for the mill rate. We have to read it 3 times. Okay, go ahead.
I'll move that the 2026 mill rate bylaw number 1085 be given reading, first reading by title only.
Thank you. Seconder? Counselor Hirschak? Discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, passed. Thank you. Next one? Okay,
So I move that the 2026 mill rate bylaw number 1085 be given third and final reading by title only.
second.
Second, oh, I thought we were already. Sorry.
No, second.
Second, and second reading by title only.
Thank you. Seconder? Counselor Cox? Discussion? No? All in favor?
Hoover,
Okay, thank you. Okay, next one?
want me to do it?
Sure.
I move that the 2026 mill rate bylaw 1085 be given third and final reading by title only.
Thank you. Seconder? All right, Counselor Fee? Discussion? Yeah?
I just want to request of the SAO that we get the revised spreadsheet of scenario 3, just that in an Excel spreadsheet sent out.
In a spreadsheet or a PDF?
Either one.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. Mike?
in favor.
Okay, thanks. We have no proclamations. Regular meeting of council, protective and corporate, is on June 2nd, 2026, 7 p.m. to be chaired by Councillor Tucky. Then there's regular meeting of council, community and municipal, June 16th at 7 p.m. and chaired by myself. We are all present. There's no exclusion of councillors, but we have question period.
Hi.
Just before you go though, I just have to let you know that we might have 2 councillors leave because they have to go to a DEA meeting. It's not that they're leaving because you're asking questions.
Oh, God.
Okay? Just be prepared. You can come forward if you like to be closer to the mic.
Sure. Not sure.
Is that, you guys are okay to sneak out if you need to sneak out?
Yeah.
Okay.
This part, yes.
I won't be offended, this part, I leave all the time.
Oh,
Okay, sorry, just to clarify. There we go, that's on.
yeah,
Clarification, that was first and second reading?
third,
That was first, second, and third reading?
because all councillors were present.
Okay, I'll wait till the end before I scold you then. Okay, so, I've been at this for probably too long, so the corporate history and opinions are too deep. Yeah, country residential, when I first got on council, didn't have paved roads, didn't have garbage service, didn't have a number of things, and the last survey, because the mayor and council mostly just adjusted the mill rate to keep things exactly as they were, there wasn't really a lot of fine detailing, which means that a lot of the changes weren't reflected, which is why you're seeing also additional changes there besides the additional development. Country residential has been, now it's quite desirable, some very beautiful houses, large acreages on now what is paved roads with more services. Well, they still don't have proper underground water and fire protection is questionable, but a lot is enhanced. Mostly, I think I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to bring up, historically, the town of Fort Smith council of the past, of 2 different councils I think has passed recommendations from advisory boards to penalize vacant, derelict, undeveloped land. And by by doing so, the recommendations at the time, as well as from numerous studies, which one came from the advisory board and then from a consultancy who recommended development plan, that incentivizing often has to come with stick, not just carrot. And by doing so, which means to weighting taxation to incentivize via de-incentivizing holding land, which favors people with wealth and resources to hold said land. We only have so much land, they don't make any more of it, which everybody's aware of, and we have an infill problem where there is a lot of land that is in town not being developed, not being used, and being held onto for 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's to a point where, again, it continues to cause additional pressures on cost for development. So incentivizing via taxation on undeveloped and vacant land was the recommendation. Doesn't mean this council is necessarily beholden to it, but it is via a consultation process and advisory board process. That is something that there was support from. I think that's something you should have considered further. In addition, this also, as I had spoken to the mayor about the consultation you had last month, this would have been an interesting and great opportunity to do some fine tuning where, as the Chamber of Commerce president, it would be remiss to not say, we could use a break, even if it's meaningless. Any little tidbit of support thrown in the business community's direction would have been appreciated. So an opportunity to balance the taxation of vacant commercial land and vacant industrial land to favor even a minute adjustment to developed commercial, developed industrial would have been seen as a admirable effort from the town of Fort Smith Council. With that, that's all I really have to mostly say. In the past, this has been done differently. I love seeing this much granular fingers in the pie. I know SAOs over the years who hate this kind of stuff when council gets into the weeds like this, but I love it. And I admire the getting into the more granular details, because that's really where nickels make dollars. The scolding. Passing for 3 readings of a change of taxation that is the first information that has been presented and adjusted, that you guys digested in person, on place, for a meeting that the agenda says hasn't started yet. I think the agenda says 7. First, second, and third reading without another opportunity is bad governance. And that's and a bad opportunity to put that out for feedback. Because now it's done, right? So it's, you've repealed, you've done first, second, third, and now I've just had an opportunity to be like, hey, wait, this has been a great chance to make a minor adjustment for what is meaningless amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but is a great show of support for the business community. That is why first, second, and third reading, especially in a special meeting, not even in a regular scheduled meeting, it's just bad flow. It's efficient, but it's bad governance when it comes to public consultation. Thank you for your work, though. I'm happy to see you guys are digging into the weeds. I hope you take the consideration of changing taxation on vacant lands differently in the future. And again, if there is any opportunity to help in any which way from the municipal corporation towards the business and industrial community, it would be to consider taxation, no matter how small. People need your businesses, your local community needs your support more than you can imagine. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
We don't have to respond.
Okay.
No,
You just,
it's questions. It doesn't
It's
have to.
questions.
You might want answers.
Oh,
Can I read them?
Do you wanna make a comment?
Well,
Yeah,
and just,
sure.
I think just a little bit of background on the other conversation would be useful, because I think there are members here who have expressed those opinions.
Okay.
Right, and I think especially with the big change with the change of assessments,
Yeah.
the previous discussion that we had was to try and just keep things as steady as possible going through this. And I sat on that stab.
You were there.
I have brought up many times the discussion about taxation of vacant and derelict properties, and it's been heard here.
Yeah.
And essentially what I've heard from my colleagues here is, let's try and just, people will experience the shock of the change of assessments this year, and that going into next year, that's the tweaking time, and I would like to especially hear again your comments on the support and changes necessary for the commercial in particular. As someone who also owns commercial property, I'd like to hear that again, and that will be taken into account for next year's process.
Thanks. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Carl.
Thanks for coming. And I was going through kind of the minutes there. I'm like, I really wish there was a way to get your voice before going through the three readings.
That was not
Right? And I almost spoke up and said, but I knew it was out of line with the flow of the meeting. But I think all very valid points. And I think not to make excuses, but just given the mix-ups and the urgency of getting tax rolled out to actually get some revenue into the town, I think, it's not less than ideal the way we did it, but I think
we all knew that growing up.
I have been on that side being scolded similarly, so I'm just passing on
Thank you.
the remembrance of trying to keep that extra bit, because that I know that I'm so happy to this day that question period's still on there. That was a weird push that I did 15 years ago.
They didn't have question period?
No, there was
Really?
no public input session. We're the only ones in Northwest Territories who have that.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. No one uses it,
for that.
but it's.
I mean, it's not often
To be
used.
fair, we've had at least two, I think.
Yeah,
You're the third.
it is. It's wonderful, except sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's oh my god, because it's after the meeting.
Nope, you're still live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which hasn't always been the case.
Okay.
Depending on who the application of. So there has been times when it has been misused or just abused. Either way, not everybody has 3 hours to listen to somebody take over the room, and that's only ever come up a couple times. But at the same time, any engagement is good engagement, and I'm happy to see the question period still there. But the fault is that it comes up after business is done, which is still better than nothing. But because I know that most people don't attend committee meetings, they come to the council meeting. So having questions about things that have often been through 2 or 3 meetings at the end, the cycle's not clean, but it's still a unique thing that we do. It's just, that's where the first, second, third reading comes back to bite, because if you have something that's important to business and you're like, somebody had a point or something, it just doesn't leave any window for there to be any third reading at the next council meeting, and then especially when it gets into special meetings, because I know engagement's already challenging enough for the regular rotation. I actually really thought this meeting was at 7. I just happened to get a YouTube
Oh,
thing. It was like, wait. Okay.
sorry, we
No.
adjusted it for our colleague who had to go to a DEA meeting.
Okay, so it did change. All right, I thought I was crazy.
No.
No, I didn't.
you.
On Facebook and our website, it states.
Okay.
This.
That's what I thought. I just went back and checked. Like, it says 6.
It says
I swear it's at 7. Doesn't matter. It's fine. I'm here. I made it. I got notified by YouTube, and I know how.
It's a busy night tonight. I'm missing
Yeah,
the
there's
entire- I'm missing the entire meeting I'm supposed to be at, so
There's another
it
meeting
is
I'm
what
supposed to
it
be
is.
at too. But anyway, the last time this happened, which I realized sadly enough was probably 10 years ago.
The assessments.
It's just because it makes me feel that's how long ago I also came to as a not a counselor in between terms. And again, it was managed very well though. It's a very confusing process, as everybody is familiar with, right? Mill rate changes don't mean tax go up number. It's always a complicated formula, and try to get understanding of that is hard. But when they change your assessment rate, and again, 10 years ago was a huge correction, because we had the lowest assessment, not just Northwest Territories, almost at north of 40. Our assessment rate for our houses was so low. It also made taxes look artificially high, because our mill rate was quite high, but because our assessment rate was so strikingly low. And so that 10 years ago correction was shocking, because at first you're like, holy crap, my house is going to be $10,000 for taxes. And then no, wait, it's not. And that eventually got ironed out, and that's what, I think as people don't like big tax changes. But turns out it was all able to be ironed out and adjusted. And I think it did take a lot of manual, but with can't manually apply taxes to every household, that doesn't obviously work for every property, but they were able to work it out where basically the revenue stayed the same and they adjusted based on the new assessment rate, lowered the mill rate to line up with the assessment rate. And honestly, there's interesting opportunities that, I mean, solution 3 I think makes some sense. I actually support tax burdening on residents because it is residents who are the services. At the same time, and not only because one of the questions about institutional came up, why not? And this is a struggle that in my later term that we tried to discuss, which is that I actually think that if we're trying to be attractive to the government as a location, that we need to be careful with how much we load into institutional. One could say though that argument is meaningless. They don't really consider taxation in their formulas, but it is something to be aware of. And when on a commercial side, you know, their service levels don't really change, whereas residential service levels change from term to term. Rec center services change, and waste management services have now changed for everybody almost. But normally commercial service levels don't change. So, and it's in industrial as well, whereas residential services are the ones that usually have seen the most sway. So again, loading it that way makes sense. That said, one of my big supports for my last term was to be that we stop this whole, you know, it's 0%, 0%, 0%, 15% sort of situation, and, you know, adjusting yourself based on inflation numbers and rationalized increases, which I'm still all for, and, you know, 3.8% or whatever is still a very rational adjustment. That's easy to defend by information alone. But when it comes to the negatives, that is a weird, you know, like number go down isn't something that you see very often when it comes to taxation, and certainly when revenue is so challenging. So what's the way to do that? And like, yeah, I'd love to see more vacant property taxation just as an incentive. If you don't like it, sell it. That's the
I think one of my concerns with the vacant discussion was like, you know, you guys got a big lot. Is how much of that is considered vacant, or is it?
Well, the whole lot is
right?
not.
Because you could potentially ding commercial guys that way too, and industrial.
If it was, like, that's actually one of the weird things. Like, I happen to have just a massive chunk of land, so it's all evaluated at one thing, which isn't great, but it's not as bad as the hotel.
I'm sectioned over.
So you section
I'm
off
sectioned.
commercial vacant.
There we go.
For 2/3 of it.
So yeah, I mean, that would be a way of making a savings, except for, of course, it costs $10,000 a line to get your surveying done, so it's not really a big cost of savings. Very well, depending on your tax load, I guess.
All right, well, I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
The only other thing you should say is, remind me to put the garbage bins up tonight.
Oh,
Tomorrow is our
yeah.
first garbage day with the new bins.
Thank you.
Put your bins
Deputy
out.
Mayor, put your garbage bins out. Oh, wait, we have to do, thank you, Chris, for coming.
Thank you.
and
Thank you,
sharing.
Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Good night.
This room has missed your presence.
So, Councillor Kershak isn't here to adjourn the meeting, so who else is gonna adjourn the meeting today?
I will move, we adjourn the meeting at
Keep this.
whatever time it is, 19:03.
19:03. And seconded that?
I'll second.
Okay, Tucky. All in favor?
Aye.